Yeah, I was in the process of asking you two-pronged question, really. A, will Israel retaliate militarily to the Iran attack? And B, should Israel do that?
Yeah, I think the best way to consider this is imagine if 300 ballistic missiles, cruise missiles, and drones were launched at London. Imagine if we had air defenses bolstered by the US that shot them down, but then as soon as the coast was clear, the message from the Americans on the world stage publicly was, Britain, don't retaliate, don't do anything. Let's call that a win. I mean, that's not a win. Defending yourself and only 7 missiles getting through and one 10-year-old girl being critically injured, that's not a win. A win is effective deterrence and winning an actual war. That would be a win. So I think that this is the reality that Israel is perversely enough living with, where this sort of aggression can be targeted at it, and yet the world's calling for it not to respond, but it has to respond, because the way to stop further attacks like this in the future is obviously to put in place a proper deterrent. Iran is only doing this because it thinks it can get away with it. It wants to establish a new normal whereby no retaliation or no meaningful retaliation is launched at it when it tries this sort of thing. And frankly, I do think that it would only do it under the Biden administration. If you think back to 2020, when Donald Trump, who we've just seen on trial, was in charge in the White House, he authorized the assassination of Qasem Soleimani, the head of the Iranian Revolutionary Guards, who was a far more iconic and famous figure than those killed by the Israelis in Syria the other day. And yet the Iranians did not dare to mount any kind of significant response at all, because they thought that Trump, was possibly a madman who would take them out, because America can take them out. The American military is so much bigger than the Iranian military. In fact, if we compare defense budgets, the American defense budget is $850 billion compared to Iran's $9 billion. Its navy is 4 times bigger. Its air force is 13,000 planes versus Tehran's 551. That's before we even count the Israeli might as well. So deterrent is possible, deterrent is necessary if we want to stop this thing happening again. But with Biden's rhetoric trying to restrict the Israelis from responding properly, if the Israelis don't respond, then the Iranians will be rubbing their hands together and laughing to themselves, because it means that they know they can get away with this again and again and again.
Well, what Iran have said is, OK, this matter is now settled. I wonder how much of this was theatrics, given they said, oh, we're sending our drones over. They'll be with you in about 8 hours, enough time for you to intercept. But they said, oh, look, if you now respond again to Israel, we will double what we did last time. And you know what we mean, rather perilously. Do you think they're alluding that they might have some sort of nuclear capability? Is that just saber rattling, or could they? Is that what is potentially giving the West the willies about not actually using what Iran have done as a green light to go in there and say enough is enough, back in your box, and strategically taking out certain facilities, military facilities, potentially nuclear facilities?
I think it's quite possible that the Iranians are nuclear armed. They certainly either have or are but a week away from having enough fissile material for 1 bomb. They may have already enough for 3, according to some reports. And the weaponization of that, i.e. forming the uranium onto a warhead and making it shootable, as it were, will take a short time. So if intelligence assessments are incorrect, we know the Iranians have pulled the wool over our eyes before, then they could already indeed be nuclear armed. But let's get this in perspective. America has the most significant nuclear arsenal in the world. The Israelis have never officially confirmed or denied if they are nuclear armed, but they are widely believed to be nuclear armed. Both of their combined forces dwarf the Iranian capabilities. Iran does not have an Iron Dome. It does not have significant missile defense systems on the scale that Israel has. If the West turned against Iran and actually, as you say, put it back in its box, it would be defeated. There's no 2 ways about it. Now, of course, let's not be simplistic about this. We've got to think about Russia and China as well, taking opportunity of such a war to come in and further their objectives, invading Taiwan in the case of Russia, or pushing into NATO countries in the case of Russia. And those are serious considerations. I don't want to make light of that. But the fact is that what the Iranians are trying to do is to deter the Israelis from further action. And if that is their goal, and if that is successful, it will mean that they have the strategic upper hand. And the Americans, unfortunately, are by putting pressure on the Israelis not to retaliate, are serving the interests of Iran in enforcing this deterrent upon Israel, making Israel think twice about whether it responds. Whereas it should be the Iranians having to think twice before they do anything, because they, let's not forget, are the aggressor here. They are the ones who are fomenting unrest around the region, who've ringed Israel with these proxy militias from Hezbollah to the Houthis that are causing so much trouble and bloodshed around the region. And of course, are conducting or trying to conduct assassination plots on our shores in Britain and working against us and our way of life. One security official told me that the Iranian threat in Britain was what kept him up at night above any other threat. So they are our enemy as much as they are Israel's enemy. And we need to make sure that they feel deterred rather than the West feeling deterred by these mad mullahs and their empty threats.
I couldn't agree more.
Jake, excellent to talk to you as always.
Fantastic.
Thank you so much for your time. Jake Wallis Simons.
1 week away from having a nuclear weapon potentially. I mean, that is chilling. Perhaps what we've got here is, you know, the American foreign policy has been to tell newspapers what they're going to do before they do it. Perhaps we're actually snapping back into proper front-footed war mode.
The way I see it is that the rest of the world, Britain, America, countries all over the world, it would be quite handy if Israel did not respond, if they did not retaliate. But as Jake quite rightly said, put yourself in the Israeli population's shoes. How would you feel it if some foreign power had just rained more than 300 missiles down onto London? Would you feel okay about our government doing nothing about it?
Yeah.
I don't think you would.